Good morning, everyone. I'm Juliana Kerr. I'm the Director of the Immigration Initiative at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, and it is my honor to welcome you and thank you all for joining us this morning on such short notice for this discussion with our distinguished panel. We ask you to please silence your phones, but we encourage you to tweet. We do have information on tweeting and the handles on your program bios. This program is on the record, and it is being live streamed. I want to thank our partner, the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition, for collaborating on this event. The Chicago Council is a non-advocacy, nonpartisan organization committed to raising awareness on pressing global issues. We have been conducting research and convening bipartisan leadership task forces on immigration policy for over 10 years. With the support of the MacArthur Foundation and the Chicago Community Trust, we have been recently examining the impact of immigration on the Midwestern economy. Copies of our reports are available here today. Also building on 40 years of survey work of American public opinion, we also released earlier this month a Chicago Council survey of the views of Midwestern business leaders on immigration policies. We focused on business leaders because other polls had revealed that the Midwest region is where the public least supports reforms. Yet business leaders are the engines of the economy, the ones who need and hire talented, skilled, and willing workers. We wanted to see if their views differed. Among the many findings showing broad bipartisan support for reform, our survey found that 77% of Midwestern business leaders think it is important that Congress and the President pass significant new immigration legislation this year. It was our hope that our survey results could just serve as a resource to policymakers and leaders looking to move beyond the current impasse. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you John Rowe, today's moderator, the retired chairman and CEO of Exelon Corporation. John is on the board of directors at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. He served as a co-chair of our Midwest Immigration Task Force, and he's also a co-chair of the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. He and his wife are also principal funders of two charter schools in Chicago, the Rowe Clark Math and Science Academy and the Rowe Elementary School, serving low-income communities. John will introduce our speakers, moderate today's discussion, and then we hope to have questions at the end of our program. Thank you again for being here. Join me in welcoming our panel.
Thank you, Juliana. It's a real pleasure to see all of you here on this issue. In my opinion, there are very few issues more important than making people feel safe in their homes, enabling them to do productive work, and require them to pay taxes when they do it. All of us have our frustrations with government. It's the fundamental American right is to complain about government. But among the things that sometimes frustrate us are what seems to be a partisan gridlock. Today, we are genuinely honored to have 4 people on this panel who have done everything they can to break gridlock on this issue. These are issues that take courage, because they are issues that sometimes bring out the worst forms of partisanship. And everyone here has done their part to speak about, to rise above this. So I am very privileged to introduce this group. You all know them all better than you know me, so I won't waste a lot of time on their introductions. But just let me say that Representative Kinzinger, who is on my immediate left, was sworn into the U.S. House in 2011. He represents the 16th District of Illinois. He is one of the most clear-spoken Republicans on immigration. And in addition, he is a person who has served this country in the Air Forces in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Next to me, and it is always fun to introduce the mayor as if no one knows him, but Rahm Emanuel, as you all know, served as Chief of Staff to President Obama, served 3 terms in the U.S. House from Chicago. He has committed himself to making Chicago the most immigrant-friendly city in the nation. I would go further. Rahm Emanuel has made it clear that in Chicago, the police forces exist to try to deal with real crime and not to throw people out of their homes who simply want to work. Next, Senator Mark Kirk was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2010 after 5 terms in the House. He has worked on issues at the World Bank and at the State Department, and recently retired from the Navy Reserve. I've had the genuine joy of working with Senator Kirk for many years on environmental issues, where he's a champion of market-friendly ways to make the environment cleaner, on defense issues, and most recently on immigration issues. Simply put, the passage of the Senate bill last year was a major step forward in dealing with this problem, and we owe a lot to Senator Kirk for his work on this issue, and I'm personally very grateful to him for that. And last but never least in my heart, especially on this issue, is Congressman Luis Gutiérrez. Luis's politics on a thing or two might be a hair to the left of mine. But I have to say that there was never a time when I was working for a living that Luis didn't have an open ear to talk to and a willingness to take into account what I was saying. And more than that, on this issue, this is not a political issue to Luis Gutiérrez. This is an issue Congressman Gutiérrez worries about every day, because people he knows and people he loves get deported. And he wants to stop that. In the political world that we have, one always worries about which party is going to get credit for what, who's going to get ahead. Congressman Gutiérrez has made it clear again and again that to him, this is not about who gets the credit. This is about solving the problem. And the clarity of his position on this has been absolutely remarkable. So I do not exaggerate when I say that it is an honor for me to introduce and to kick off this panel. These are people who do make a difference in this world. My first question is the general one about the economy. The Council's recent leadership survey showed that most business people think immigration reform is good for the economy. I agree. Our recent work a couple of years ago said that the economy vastly benefited from more immigration, both at the high skill end and the low skill end. So I'd like to start this first question with Mayor Emanuel, since it's, after all, his city. Mr. Mayor, how would you relate immigration to the city's economic performance?
Well, there's a couple points both, but strengthen the basic foundation of the city's economy, which is its neighborhoods and its communities. And Congressman Gutiérrez and I had breakfast this morning, but just to give you a couple points. One, that just shy of 45, 46% of all new small businesses are by immigrants. So if you're pro-small business, you have to be pro-immigration reform. Of all the business licenses the city of Chicago has for starting a new small business, just shy of half of them come out of recent immigrants that came to the city of Chicago. In addition to that, if you want to see a strengthening economy locally, obviously you want home buying, you want appliance buying, things that come in a home, things that go with a car. You have people that come and feel like they're going to stay here in this country, or more importantly in this city. You're going to have a growing healthy residential community. You need people buying homes and also putting down their roots. And immigration reform, giving people that sense of security that there's a path to citizenship, will spur the type of home purchasing, auto purchasing, and all the other activities that come with starting a new home and a new family. Those are just two examples of why this strengthens a local economy here in the city of Chicago. I would also venture, if you wanted to go farther out, you can look at what happens at our major universities from research and patents. And I'm doing this by memory, if I'm not mistaken, out of the University of Illinois, computer science and engineering, I think 12% of the patents coming out of there come from immigrants. That one is based on memory, but I do know about the small business, home ownership, home purchasing, et cetera. All of those are major drivers for the economy, both on whatever skill level you want to look at. They drive the economy forward. And if you want to be pro-small business, which regardless is part of our DNA in our country in the sense of the young entrepreneur, the people that are starting up their own business in their neighborhood and community, you cannot be anti-immigrant or immigration reform and be pro-small business. And the data here in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, across the country, same type of data. And so to be pro-small business means to be pro-immigrant reform, because those are the people that have sacrificed. They came to this country. They are pursuing their dream for their children and for themselves, and they're doing something here they could not do in their country of origin. A lot of sacrifice to it. And for them, starting that business is the first step of getting their children on the way to achieving the American dream.
Congressman Kinzinger?
Yeah, thanks. And it's well said about the small business issue. I think it's important to keep in mind that a country that's going to be strong into the future is a country that has to grow. It has to grow in population. One of the biggest threats, if you actually look at one of our rivals, I would suggest, is Russia. Despite their recent, insurgence into the world and their recent more powerful position they find themselves in, one of the biggest threats the Russians face is actually a declining population. They have a male population that doesn't live much past 60. They're not having kids, and you're actually seeing that long-term, the real population, not the growth, but the real population of Russia is on a decline. And so any economist in the future and anybody that studies world politics says that's one of the greatest threats to Russia maintaining a position as a great power or a future strong economy. I think it's essential from the economic side that we discuss with the American people the reality here. Part of the reason I wanted to be on this panel too, besides to talk about an important issue, is to talk about the raw politics of why this is difficult. And we know in my party as Republicans, there's a lot of concern out there. There's some misinformation. What do we have to do? But I think one of the keys is to understand the reality that a growing economy and an economy with new people is how we're going to be strong into the future. I'm 35, almost 36 years old. I don't have any kids. I'm part of the problem. People aren't having kids nowadays, so how are we going to grow this economy? And that's very important. So in the process of now turning the American people to understand the economic benefit that immigration brings to this nation, I think we have to address that in a big way. And I think that's up to the business community. It's up to politicians too, but it's up to the business community. It's up to all community leaders to stress and explain the difficulties that we face without that. And we'll be a very powerful country into the future if we get this right.
Senator Kirk, Congressman Gutierrez, a lot of polls show that people really aren't very certain about how immigration affects unemployment in the short run. Even people who believe that it's good for the country in the long run are still sometimes unsettled about short-term effects. Would the two of you pick up on that point, please?
Real quickly, let me pick up on that point. If you're talking about immigration on the high skill end, I've always been very much for the H-1B visas. If we can bring someone to the country who brings us an entirely new operating system for a computer, that could be billions in exports for the United States, that we can brain drain other countries into the advantage of the United States. That is what we should do.
Well, John,
Congressman Gutierrez.
first of all, let me just say that how happy I am to be here this week in Chicago with the mayor, with Senator Kirk, and especially with Congressman Kinzinger. The reason is because so many people in America feel that comprehensive immigration reform is dead, that somehow it doesn't have any possibility of being enacted into law. And I think, if anything, our presence here on this panel this morning says that it's alive and well, and that the conversation is continuing in America. And so I want to say to my friend Adam, thank you. Thank you, number one, for being here and sharing this stage with us here in the city of Chicago. And number two, for saying thank you to your caucus for presenting a set of principles which allowed us to open a dialogue. And so I just want to say, when I read the principles, and I encouraged other Democrats to respond accordingly. And that is to say, listen, Democrats no longer are the majority in the House of Representatives, and we have to stop acting as though we are. But Republicans need to understand that the American people want comprehensive immigration reform. And I think that was your response. That is crafting a set of principles that is reflective of your values. But here's what it said to me. It said, we'll legalize everyone that deserves to be legalized, because not everybody in America that's an immigrant, many of them are simply foreigners here. We want those that have come here to work hard, sweat, and toil to be legalized, that all of those who qualify for legalization can be legalized, and that there will be citizenship for millions, and we will end the deportations. So I think that was a very positive, so I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. I think immigration reform and where we're at, in terms of your question, John, look, we've got to make a decision in America. Do we want the food that we eat picked by foreign hands in the United States of America under our guidelines, or do we want the food picked by foreign hands in foreign countries? Because in the end, it's going to be picked by foreign hands, because nobody in this room woke up this morning to come here to send their kids to school and to college and to a school to go in the fields to do hard, backbreaking work. On the high end, I agree with Senator Kirk. We have a huge need because we're not filling the vacuum. Now, mayors like Rahm, Emanuel, and others are going to begin to fill the vacuum in the STEM industry. Until such time, I believe fundamentally any job created in America should go to someone born in America. But in the absence of a qualified American born here in this country, we need to keep our economy strong and to continue to welcome immigrants to fulfill the kinds of jobs and responsibilities that they fulfilled in the past, keeping our economy strong. So I think that that's very important that we move forward on that. So I don't really think, if you look at Mexico, since it's always, I was on C-SPAN last week and everybody apologized, telling me how much they liked Mexicans and then telling me how much they hated comprehensive immigration reform. So I figured I might as well bring it up. But Mexico's our second largest trading partner. I mean, they create millions of jobs in America just by trade. And Mexican immigrants send back billions of dollars to Mexico so they can buy the very products here. And then, of course, the 11 million undocumented, obviously. Lastly, you want to take unemployment down a notch? I got a way to do that. The mayor has explained to us about nearly 50% of the new business license. Just imagine for a moment if we were to take and unleash the entrepreneurial spirit of 11, 12 million people, unleash it. If they had the understanding and the knowledge and the faith and the confidence that they were not going to be deported, here's what they're going to do. They're going to open new businesses, they're going to buy new homes, they're going to buy new cars, and they're going to stimulate our economy, and they're going to create jobs for all of us, because we know that 70% of all economic activity is people buying something. So I think, John, at every aspect, and then as my friend Adam says, they've got lots of kids. So they're going to buy lots of products, because we all remember.
That was a more eloquent way of saying it right there.
I just
So
said
I
had
think
no
at
kids.
all of those levels, John, we can help strengthen our economy. And again, I want to say what an honor it is to be here with two, obviously, leaders in the Republican Party, but leaders in our nation also, for being here this morning in Chicago.
Can I add one thing to that, John? I don't think there's anybody, right, left, center, no matter what, that would not raise their hand if I ask you, do we have a broken immigration system? I think everybody agrees. The right will say yes, and they'll probably focus on border issues. The left will say yes, they'll focus on deportation issues. Everybody agrees there's a broken system. I think when we explain that, and I've seen this in the polling among GOP base, when you explain the issue, what are we talking about with immigration reform? What's the long-term principles? We actually find that 77% of Republicans agree with the principles that are being laid out right now in Washington, D.C. The question is how do we get to where we're talking on the same page? And that's where, the one thing I would say is we all have to take a deep breath. Luis has done a great job in, I think, depoliticizing the issue because he's very passionate about actually solving it and understands he has to have Republican buy-in to solve it. This isn't left versus right. It doesn't need to be left versus right. This is about America. This is about the future of our country and how do we address this and how do we fix it. And so I think if we can get away from people chaining themselves in our office, for instance, and demanding citizenship, which does not go over well, trust me, with people, more to a thing of, hey, how do we fix this problem and how do we become a stronger country? I think we can achieve this, and I think we can achieve it pretty quick.
Mr. Mayor?
I want to add 2 other points to the original question about how immigration reform drives economic growth. In Chicago, the Magnificent Mile produces more sales tax revenue than any other part, from a retail standpoint, any other part of the city or state. The second most geographically biggest driver of retail sales tax for the city and the state is Little Village, 26th Street. Those what I call the 2 magnificent miles. And why? Because of all the small family-owned businesses where people not only from the city of Chicago, surrounding area, as far as Columbus, Ohio to Minneapolis, come here to purchase things because they can't get what they need that they remember from their country of origin. Second most producer of sales tax revenue for the city of Chicago is 26th Street, right after Michigan Avenue. And that's an example of how does it drive the local economy. Second, if you took the Mexican-American population in the city of Chicago, the city of Chicago's Mexican-American population would be the 4th largest city in Mexico right now. Last year, the city of Chicago led the United States in direct foreign investment, where companies from overseas come and invest here. The reason I did my first trip to Mexico City to create the relationship between Mexico City and the city of Chicago is I met with the 25, 22 CEOs who are looking to follow the Mexican-American population that left Mexico, came here, and they want to open up industries in food services, financial services, telecommunication, to follow the expats. So when you're looking at, how does immigration reform help us from a pure economic standpoint, you have the small businesses that are throughout our community and neighborhoods, like on 26th Street, that drive a huge amount of sales tax revenue. And whether it's from Poland, Ireland, Mexico, China, South Korea, industries in those and companies in those countries will invest where there is a big population where they can service it. And Mexico sees the opportunity in the city of Chicago for direct foreign investment, both things driving jobs and economic growth for the city of Chicago.
My mother-in-law, who was 93, was in a nursing home for 6 weeks this summer. I watched the people who were caring for her. I don't know whether you call them high-skilled or low-skilled, but they didn't all come from Wales. This was a veritable collage of colors of people, and we are very dependent on those people. Senator Kirk, you have worked very hard on border security. I wonder if you would lead us in discussing how you see solving
I would say border security is the sine qua non to building a bipartisan coalition that is the only way to move with this legislation through the Senate. That when we consider this bill, the key was getting the commitment from the president to double the Border Patrol. Because we were doing something in addition to national security that the president would have not naturally done, we built the votes for the bill in the Senate.
Congressman Kinzinger, I know you've flown the border.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it?
As the senator said, border security is essential, and I think we have to go beyond just saying doubling border patrol. I think we have to go to metrics. I'm not a math guy, so I don't know how metrics always work, but we have to go to metrics, and some way to have bipartisan sign-off to the border is up to 95% secure or whatever. It's going to be almost, humans are great at getting around things. It's going to be almost impossible to get to 100%. So let's be realistic. My experience is this. I've flown missions on the border. In fact, I do that every year. I'm still an Air National Guard pilot, and one of our missions is on the border. And we flew specifically an area called McAllen, Texas. And there's no fencing. You watch as groups will cross the border, and then a Border Patrol agent responds, and they just step into the Rio Grande and are unapprehendable, and then they send another group forward, and then that guy has to respond over here. And the Border Patrol's outmanned. The bigger issue with it is this, though. We would also patrol sometimes 10, 20 miles into Texas, and we'd find groups of 30 people sleeping in what are called mottes, kind of low, thick brush in Texas. And we'd see them on our thermal vision, and Border Patrol would respond. And these braveless, cowardice coyotes that bring these people over the border would run first. They'd hear the trucks, they'd know what they are, they wouldn't even tell the people what are happening, they'd run, and they'd disappear. And then these 18 or 20 people that paid their life savings to come over are now left in the dark, and in many cases, half of them, 3/4 of them will be apprehended, and a third or a fourth of them will disappear into the night 20 miles from the nearest town, and in some cases, they pass away and die. I think it's essential to get this border security piece right. I think it's going to be essential for conservative buy-in. And I'll be honest with you, the concern now, and I'm sure people aren't going to agree and some will, there's a belief on the right side of the aisle that the president is not eager to follow the laws that are passed. I mean, you look at the healthcare law and the parts that have been delayed and pushed off and stuff. So this is a raw reality. There's a belief in that. And so there's a concern that a comprehensive immigration reform package would lead to somewhat what it did under Reagan, where the border security piece doesn't happen and the other pieces do. If we can put a guarantee in there that you have border security and then the next steps, even if it's a comprehensive package, I think you can get this done.
Congressman Gutierrez.
Yes, number one, tell me what security measures are necessary to get comprehensive immigration reform, and I'm for them. I drafted the first comprehensive immigration reform bill with Senator McCain and Senator Kennedy back in 2002 and 2003 when we introduced it. I assure everybody that when I introduced it to the immigrant community across the country, all they kept saying to me was, why was the first 2/3 of the bill all enforcement? And I said, because that's necessary. People like to talk about the border. We will secure the border. We will take every reasonable, humane effort to secure that border. But I've got one better. You want to make sure that people working in America are the ones that are eligible to work in America? Let's get a verification system in place that says to every employer in America, before you hire somebody, you must vet that person through a system in the federal government to say that person's qualified. And if you do not use that system and you are caught, the severity of the law that we will unleash upon you will ensure that no one does it after you. That is, we are going to put people in jail that hire people undocumented in America. And the way to do that is by getting a verification system, and we will use those metrics, Adam, that neither I understand, but I know are in place. We've got to have better metrics than a Social Security card that my grandpa in the 30s got, right? My dad got one in the 40s. I got one in the 50s. My grandson just got one like 5 years ago. When there's more information on an ATM card than on that Social Security card in terms of information about you. So we can do the kinds of things that are necessary. And that is necessary in order to get it done. Then you have buy-in, I think. I think if one thing my side of the aisle has been very clear on, and I want to say to Senator Kirk, thank you for joining in that bipartisan group. I think you were very critical and important in getting the 60 votes, so then we can get the 8 more after you, but we needed to get to those 60 votes. And I was very proud of the position that my 2 U.S. senators from the state of Illinois played, both Durbin and Senator Kirk, in crafting. So when they said to me, hey, we need this, and we need 20,000 more Border Patrol agents, I said to myself, look, there are people who die every day trying to return to America that die in that border. We can't protect our women in the armed forces of the United States. Think about what happens to millions of undocumented women who work in the fields and in factories across this country every day in this country. 1,100 people are deported every day. Every day. We have thousands of American citizen children in foster care in the hands of the state government because their parents have been deported. This is a human tragedy. So you let me know, and I will go to the Democrats and let them know what is necessary to get comprehensive immigration reform so that we can make people feel safe and we can have a system which finally has at least some parallel to our sense of morality and of fairness and of just human kindness and what an immigration system should be like.
Mayor Emanuel.
I'm going to bite my tongue so I don't destroy the bipartisanship that was up here. But if I can, I'm not going to let Adam's statement stand untested. First of all, as it relates to border security, the president's record speaks for itself in enforcement without the legislation. And I think that, let me echo what Mark said, or Senator Kirk, in the sense that if border enforcement is the sine qua non for immigration reform, you're going to have a very cooperative administration and president. And I would venture to say that the attack on the president is more about camouflaging the differences within the Republican Party, because the record of the president for the last 5 years on border security speaks for itself. And I do think that as part of border security, it should be comprehensive security, which is why Luis's point about employee security and verification is essential about any security package. So if we want to talk about security, let's have a comprehensive security package from the workforce to the border, and then you're going to have a lot of buy-in. That was as calm as I can be about bipartisanship.
Let me just say that, I'll just have to add that if we don't want to recognize that there is a mistrust in a group of Republicans that frankly make up a majority of the House, like it or not,
I got it, but
then we're not going to get there.
that's fine.
As a moderator, I think I can just bestow peace on this. Mr. Mayor, no one has ever accused you of excessive bipartisanship.
That's right. That's okay with me.
I know. Senator Kirk, would you tell us just a little bit about how a bipartisan majority did come
Let me
together?
add a little bit more spice to the panel. I
Oh,
am
good.
amazed at how intelligently presenting that Adam is doing for a guy who totally flunked his Navy entrance exam.
I had to go into the Air Force.
Yeah, to get it, got it
I
in
like
the
my
Air Force.
5-star hotels, Senator.
If ever you guys need a golf course built anywhere in the world, just call the Air Force.
Happy to do it.
Would you tell us a little more about how the bipartisan majority came together in the Senate?
I would say that some of what you want, some of what I want was the necessary part. That I think there's a strong part of the Democratic Party that was resistant to a strong border. I defer to the former chief of staff because I think the president has deported more people than any previous president.
That the record says?
I think that's his record on enforcement of immigration law.
I'm afraid I'm going to get partisan again here, and as you all know, no moderator can control this group. So I'm going to try to steer us in a little bit different direction now. Congressman Kinzinger, what do you think it takes to put a bill together in the House now? Step by step?
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is listen to some of the radio talk shows that you guys know so well, where it just stirs up the base, and not even the base. It stirs up part of the base, and it does. And they do that because they make money and they sell radio ads, right? I mean, all you have to do is turn on some of them and hear them talk about all this terrible stuff about America, and I mean, it happens on both sides of the aisle. I'm not just attacking my own party here, but. They've stirred up people to believe that what we're doing, and if we go to conference with the Senate bill, all we're doing, they say a pathway to conference is a pathway to amnesty, right? I've heard that. The reality is going to conference is about as constitutional as you can get. So I think what's most realistic this year, I hate to say this because I have a problem with, people that simply are scared of their own shadow in politics. I'll see legislators salute the casket of a 19-year-old who comes over from giving his life overseas for a country he barely knows, and they're unwilling to give their own political career for that same country, but they'll still have a tear, So the sad thing is I think we have to get past some of the primaries. But I think once we do, I think if we can get, and what you may see out of the House is a border security bill, followed by high-skilled visas, and then maybe followed by, we have to, if we went with just legalization today, just legalization, no pathway to citizenship, I think it would pass in a second. My concern with just legalization is, are you creating a second class of citizens that never have an opportunity to apply for citizenship? That's a concern I have. But I think if you look at where Republicans are, the moderates, the conservatives, what we would agree on, where our base is, I think we're a lot closer together than what we think. And so I think you may see a step-by-step approach out of the House, and then maybe conference comes together and they come up with a bill that everybody can agree on, or most people can agree on. Luis, who's been working this so hard for so long with Republicans and Democrats, probably can tell you the same, that I think we're a lot closer than the media and frankly most people think we really are.
Yeah, I had, Mayor and I had a conversation this morning over breakfast, and I shared with him, John, what I'll share now given Adam's comments, and that is, I part from the same premise. It seems to me that the issue is one of timing now. That is to say, it's hard to get done now. That doesn't mean it's hard to get done at all, just now. And you brought up the issue of primaries. I think that we're over that it needs to get fixed and what the different parts are. The Republican majority in the House of Representatives says, we want to do this in parts. And the president said, that's fine with me. Let's do it that way. And they said, well, you know, here are our principles. And I read what the president responded on CNN to those principles. And he said, he tried to find a way to be in sync with your principles. I mean, he really tried. I think in the State of the Union address, he was very balanced, right, in bringing out immigration reform and bringing us together. I'm happy you bring up the issue of citizenship because that is a vital key issue to this debate moving forward. And I think as long as we do not stop avenues to citizenship moving forward, then we have a path forward that will unite Republicans and Democrats in the House. But in the end, you're in the majority in the House of Representatives, and I want to say this in terms of bipartisanship. Look, I can't stop, nor do I want to. 2,000 Latinos turning 18 every day in America, angry at a political party, right, that they feel is being unfair to them on immigration. There are millions, and I was just with the Resurrection Project this past Saturday, where over 100 people paid $675 to become a citizen, and there are 8 million Latino, and that we're going to do outreach to become citizens of this country. Those are realities. Now, do I want to help them become citizens? Yes. Do I want to register those 18-year-olds to vote? Yes. But I would rather make them citizens and have them register to vote and deal with the issue of economics, of social issues, of foreign policy, and who we're going to put on the Federal Reserve Board. I want to deal with those issues and take this issue off the table between Republicans and Democrats, and then let's have a conversation about other things. But that will happen, and until this issue is on the table, it will continue to remain an issue that divides us, and divides us as a nation also.
Mr. Mayor.
I would just say that as, obviously, these three great gentlemen, all, et cetera, that as somebody sit back, watches, and I want to echo underscore something Luis just said. The debate this year made a major change from whether to when, and that's a significant change. And the question is no longer whether it happens. There's some issues about the fine-tuning, whether you do it in pieces, not just legal status, but to a path decision. But basically, the outlines are done. It's not a whether it's going to happen. Now it's when does it happen, so it has the least political consequence. And in fact, Luis and I, at this morning's breakfast, were talking about how Chicago create the infrastructure with the assumption it's going to happen. So we are accelerating that citizenship and that path to citizenship and making sure that we have the institutional structures in place to actually follow through on my pledge that we're the most immigrant-friendly city. And I think there will be huge economic benefits to the city of Chicago, because whether somebody's from Ireland or Israel, Poland or Peru, Mexico or Morocco, I want them to see Chicago and the future of their children in this city, because that's how this city got built before, and that's how it's going to be built in the future.
John, let me follow.
I asked my mother for the letter from the Ho-Chunk and the Sac inviting the Welsh and Cornish to southwest Wisconsin, but she was unable to produce it. Senator Kirk, did you want to just do a wrap-up?
I wanted to add
Juliana's
one extra thing that Rahm and I have been working on, that we are almost at that point where between the United States and Poland, we do not require a visa to enter the United States. That is our intention, to fill Chicago hotel rooms over the holidays with Poles who are visiting their families, us being the largest Polish city in the world. Yeah. A tremendous economic opportunity.
Look, this is, I think about it. My grandfather came here in 1917 from Moldova. My father from Israel in 1959. You go up to von Steuben, where my mother went. I brought Gorbachev when we had all the Nobel Peace Prize winners. And the young woman, who was a valedictorian, came from Yemen when she was in fourth grade. She's at Northwestern now on a full-paid scholarship. In von Steuben, the population that my mother went, that was all Jewish, there's 126 different nationalities. That is hugely in our economic advantage. And to take up what Adam was saying, in Russia, that's not possible. That's why they're on the decline. Immigration is essential to our future. It tells you where we're going, and it creates financial, economic, and cultural bonds to every part of the world. So whether it is Peru, whether it is Mexico, whether it is China, whether it's South Korea, whether it's part of different countries, Ghana, Nigeria, and Africa, this is in our economic advantage. And for a city that's known for its neighborhoods and its diversity of ethnicities, no other city is poised to take advantage of this like the city of Chicago.
I'd like to, John.
John keeps looking for whether he's supposed to can. We got lots of words to say here, man.
I cannot imagine there being a last word between the four of you.
Let me just say, John, that I think this really requires a bipartisan solution. However, we can't get it done unless Republicans and Democrats agree. So there are some things you can just do on a partisan basis. This is just not one of them. And the whole rest of the nation has come together. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, AFL-CIO, Chamber. Everybody's coming together. The Senate came together. Where the one place where people aren't getting together and getting it done is in the House of Representatives. But I think you see here that there is a foundation for getting that done. So a couple of last things. Number one, I have said this to my Republican colleagues and friends. If you stand with the immigrant community, you will be rewarded. Number one, I will stand with you regardless. And that causes a lot of concern and trepidation in my own Democratic caucus. But there are things you have to put ahead of your party. And I didn't go to the Congress of the United States to be a spokesman for the Democratic Party, but for the people of the 4th Congressional District and of the immigrant community. But I also say that I would hope, since many of my other arguments don't work, that, look, the Republican Party has basically shooed away 3/4 of the Asian community in the last 2 election cycles. 3/4, 3 out of 4 Asians, and 2 out of 3 Latinos. The 2 fastest growing groups in America. If it wants to be a party of the future, then it needs to deal and grapple in a fair, honest, humane way with the issue of immigration. And if that's done, I just want to say that I'm ready to stand with anyone and to speak to my community with a clear voice to say, reward those who stood up with you, regardless of their political party, because that is the way for America to heal itself. Thank you.
Juliana is going to pick up some audience questions now.
Uh-oh.
This is when we open up questions from the audience. We actually only have a few minutes left in our program, but I would like to open the floor, and you have to please wait for the microphone to be called on you, and please stand as well. We can start over here with, yeah.
Hi, I'm Ellen Carmel from AJC, and first of all, I want to thank the panel for adding new energy and frankly new reasonableness into this important debate, so thank you all. I'm wondering whether there are other aspects of immigration legislation beyond security and economics that you've all spoken about quite a bit that you feel strongly about. For example, we've heard that Senator Kirk cares about provisions for immigrant veterans. There may be elements of waivers for specific countries, like you mentioned, for Poland. Are there other elements of immigration legislation that you haven't been able to talk about here today and that may not be getting the attention in the media that you'd like to share with the audience? Thank you.
There's one point that's in the Senate bill that I would always open up your discussion with conservatives on, that due to my service in Afghanistan as a reservist, many Hispanic surnamed soldiers that I served with, that we crafted a provision in the Senate bill that says if you are in the service of the United States and you receive a combat infantry badge which says that I was under fire, instantly you become a U.S. citizen, on the principle that if you risk life and limb alongside us, you are an American. So it's a rocket sled to citizenship. Because I'm a military guy, let me just put something off to the side that's tactical on this point. If you have, say, for lack of a better term, like American Dreamer platoon next to a Taliban concentration, God help that Taliban group if there's a bunch of American Dreamers who know that once they get their CIB, they're going to seriously kick serious Taliban butt. That's going to happen. And in that scenario, all those people should be United States citizens instantly.
On top of it, one area I'm very concerned with, and back when we had the unfortunate government shutdown and some other things, it was an area that we pushed to keep kind of going, and that's the area of Iraqi and Afghan translator visas and opportunities to come. I mean, we have people that have fought with American soldiers for anywhere from a year to 10 years, the entire depth of the war. Some cases they'll have to wear masks because their family will die or they'll be killed, and they go out, accept the same fire that American soldiers accept in order to be that communication between the local populace and our soldiers. So I think that's something that it's very slow at the State Department right now, and something that I hope in this process we can free up and help those that put their lives on the line for us.
I think it's very important as you look at the principles. One of the things that I want to share with you in my discussion with many, when the Republican majority in the House of Representatives says no special pathway to citizenship, this is what we understand, and is that you're not going to stop a pathway to citizenship. We can deal with no special pathway, but if what they are saying is that 1.5 million dreamers in their principles, they say all youth can get their green card right away and can go to citizenship. They say that. I want to make sure that when those dreamers 5 years later apply for citizenship, that they can reach back under normal pathways established and go get their mom and their dad and get their green cards. So I think that's an important element, that yes, no special pathway, but keep all of the ones that exist open so that we can have fair pathways to American citizenship.
I was going to, the family piece of this is essential. The only other thing I would say is you can go to any university in the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois, and there are people there under student basis, and I don't care what field of study. Obviously, people focus on the science, computer, engineering field. I don't care what field. They want to stay. It's one of our greatest, let them stay. They're going to open up another business. It's going to be professionals, and it's going to have another economic boost to the United States or the city of Chicago. So both family unification capacity is for the dreamers, but also any student who's studying today, graduate, undergraduate, let's put them on an expedited basis to citizenship. It's all to our advantage.
Okay, we have time literally for about one more question. How about back there, Henrik?
Hi, Henrik Rasmussen. I'm an immigrant from Denmark, and I want to thank everyone here for your welcoming attitude. That's one of the things I think are unique about America, is how good of a job America does at integrating immigrants once they're here. So I'm wondering if you could touch on what some of the key aspects of successful integration are and what America can do at still being the best in the world at this and doing an even better job than we are right now.
Since I'm Mr. Pro-Immigrant and the Democrat, I want to make sure we make this absolutely clear. Learning English and making that your language and acquiring English language skills, I think is fundamental and essential. That doesn't mean you forget Polish and you forget German and you add it to your repertoire to make us a stronger nation, right? And we should be ready when we do comprehensive immigration reform for that integration of them into our society. So I think integration is getting a home and learning about our financial system and learning about our rules and our laws. And you know something, not making the mistake that Alexander Hamilton, as Groupon did, was a fine president of the United States, knowing about civics and our country and our history. Because once they learn about them, I think they remember half of the people that were legalized in the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act, 28 years later, have not applied for American citizenship. Because one thing you can't do is you can't legislate fidelity, right? You can't legislate loyalty. But if we teach them about the language, we teach them about this country, guess what I believe they're going to do? They're going to be like you and I, and they're going to want to be great, proud American citizens.
Actually, unlike any other country, one of the things that stands out about the United States is the fact that we're a country of immigrants. And I support 100% what Luis said in the sense of learning English, making it the requirement, et cetera. But let me add one thing. There is something now for immigrants that exists that you can't legislate that makes America unique. Every immigrant, regardless of where they've traveled from to get to the United States, has made it one thing that has bonded them in that experience. They want to provide their children an opportunity they don't think they can get in their country of origin. And that value system of that sacrifice, that struggle we made as a family to get here, or that we left other family members and only came up in different waves to get here, that is, trust me, as a son of an immigrant, that's inculcated into you that when people made sacrifices so you would have this opportunity. And nothing is as unique in the sense of how do you create that cohesion. You can't legislate it. Trust me, mom and dad and grandpa who live in the house will take care of it. They will tell you at the table. People sacrificed their other relatives that never made it to get to this land of opportunity, and you are not to waste this opportunity. You're special, and you better use it. And as long as that exists in our culture as wide, and it does, trust me, at the dinner and the kitchen tables throughout any immigrant home, you don't have to worry about integration. It will take care of itself because they made sacrifices for their children's future.
Okay, well, our time has come. It is 11 o'clock. It's time to adjourn our event. Please join me in thanking Mayor Emanuel, Senator Kirk, Representative Gutierrez, Representative Kinzinger, and John Rowe for this discussion. And thank you all for being here today.